What does it mean to be a responsible digital citizen? And why is it even relevant? Let's find out. My guest, Yetty Williams, is here to educate us all about this. Yetty Williams is an advocate for digital citizenship and believes every child and family can learn to use digital for good. Her coaching practice focuses on intentional digital parenting. She's the founder of LagosMums, the first Nigerian blog dedicated to mums, parents, and caregivers. She believes that parenting should be a mindful, intentional, and collaborative process. As a parenting coach, her mission is to create LagosMums so that it's a destination for e-village for different people, different family members, male and female, even though she didn't say the male part, but I think it should be all-inclusive. So let's get right to it. Yetty, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, last week we talked about parenting on some level, and it's quite exciting to be talking about the digital element of this. But my first question would be, what does it mean to be a responsible digital citizen?
Absolutely. So we no longer live in just a physical world. All of us are online in some capacity or the other.
Yep.
So responsible digital citizenship means knowing how to show up online, how to use the platforms, how to connect with other people in the digital world, and ensuring that you actually are using it for good, positively, and making an impact positively all around. And that's something that's not, you don't just fall into it, you need to learn it. And especially for children today who are all born into a digital world. So children certain ages and below have no idea of what a world pre-digital is. But that doesn't mean they know how to be responsible citizens in that virtual world that sometimes seems very different from your physical reality.
You know, there was something you said just now. You said how to show up in it. What do you mean?
So there's something called the disinhibition effect, which happens when you're online. And typically when you're online, the way you behave, the way you respond, the comments you make, the things you can say in a virtual world can feel very different from your in-person interactions. So for example, what a child online might say, the comments they might make, they would never say to somebody in front of their face. But when you're behind the screen, the disinhibition effect means that you don't really feel that it's a person behind the screen that you're attacking or saying something mean to. There's that remove, you can remove and detach yourself from it. So if a child is not helped to understand that, no, what you do online is real life. It's not separate. You can't be one kind of person online and a different kind of person in front of somebody. So that's what we're talking about in terms of having your children understand that who you are online should match who you are in person.
I see. You know, for the first time, I've never actually really paid attention to that. And for me, there's a disconnect because it seems like two completely different worlds. So how does the parent navigate around all of that?
Exactly. So that's the exact challenge. Is a lot of parents today, I keep saying we're the last generation that have one leg in analog and one leg in digital, yet we're raising digital citizens, digital natives.
Sorry to interrupt you, but when you say we're the last generation, we being parents in their 40s?
Yes.
Because parents in their 60s who are still raising young children, they don't necessarily even have one leg in, one leg out.
Right. So exactly. So I think I'm talking about the age that have Gen Zs. An alpha generation. You're typically late 30s, 40s on average. So you're the one who grew up and started using the internet as an adult.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? But you are raising a child who doesn't know a pre-digital world. So from the day they were born, they've known about screens, they've known about phones, they've known about social media. So they don't have any imagination of a world pre-digital. So because of that tension, if I'm an adult, I'm learning about life in the digital world, but I'm also raising a child who's also in that digital world that I'm still trying to figure out. That's part of what causes the tension. Parenting by default rests on the fact that I raised my child to a large extent how I was raised or what my childhood was like. So if my childhood and my child's childhood are so different because our situations are different, how do you then start to wrap your head around how do I educate myself to be able to prepare this child for the future that's here? But it's not a life I lived as a child. So that's where some of the dissonance happens. However, moving forward, you will see that the Gen Zs today, they were born into this world. So for them, the challenge will not be the same challenge of where's the line between what's right pre-digital living, post-digital living. For them, it's just the same continuum.
So where do values and beliefs come into play?
And that's where the big work really is I really believe that a lot of parents, every single person needs to go through a process of unlearning to relearn based on the world that we live in today. However, it does not suggest that our values and beliefs need to go out of the door. It doesn't. What we need to do is, I go through something called 3 E's.
Okay.
Educate yourself.
Okay.
Why are your children online? What do they like doing? Where are they spending time? So you lean in and understand how your children are using digital first.
Okay.
When you understand that, you have your values, you have your beliefs, you know why certain sites in your view are inappropriate for a child, then you can start empowering the child to make the right choices when they're online. Not if they see bad things, but when they see inappropriate things. What do they do when they come across something inappropriate? What will ring in their mind when mom and dad are not there is, oh, we've talked about this. When I see content like this, I should step away. I shouldn't click on it. And if I do click on it and I start seeing more of that, because that's how algorithms work, which we'll get into if we have time for that, is a child knows that I should raise my voice and tell my mom or dad or the caregiver in my life that, oh my goodness, I clicked on something I shouldn't have, and now I'm seeing more of this content. Then you have an adult that can step in and help to protect that child from seeing more of that content, because the devices have no clue that that is a child seeing or who stumbled on this content. And then you need to add the E of empathy, is as a parent, have empathy for your children. So when your child is upset because they posted something on social media and nobody liked it, you can't dismiss it. Because that's the equivalent of a child when we were growing up, going to a playground and nobody would play with you on the playground. If that child comes home and says, Mom, Dad, I went to the playground, nobody would play with me. They didn't let me go on the slides. They didn't let me take turns on merry-go-round. You would understand and empathize and say, oh, what happened? What happens is when a parent dismisses that child to say, so they didn't like your post, so why is that upsetting you? You've shut that down and you're not empathizing with a child who's growing up in a world where their self-esteem is tied to what happens in the online world. So it's so critical we get it so that we can help to guide them, to help them in this world that's exposed to billions of people online.
This is some heavy stuff, because I'm listening to you and I'm like, what if I'm an adult who doesn't have the talent or gift of empathy? Where do I even begin?
Right. That's why it's a process. You have to unlearn and say, all right, in the world we live in today, what do I need to be an intentional digital parent? You notice I said that's what I focus on a lot more, because a lot of the questions and issues I'm getting, it's all around screen times. Majority of the time. And it really, what's happening is, if a parent is not equipped, there's no way they can help raise a child to be a responsible digital citizen if they themselves don't understand what is going on, what are the downsides, what are the possibilities, because it's not good or bad. It is really about how you show up, how you use it, how you recognize the red flags as a parent, as a child. What are the red flags? If I see certain things, what do I do? How do I pick up that my child is maybe being cyberbullied? Because once again, physical bullying, you can see it. Maybe a child comes in with a bruise. Monday, Tuesday, what's going on? It might eventually come out. So and so is pushing me on the playground. You can take it up and go to school. But when it's cyberbullying, nobody's going to know. It's that child and a screen. So if a parent doesn't know, for example, to pick up, this child seems unhappy when he or she gets off their screen, or they're agitated, or they're always hiding their device. Those are the things you need to start saying, these are some red flags. I need to find the right way through empathy to have a conversation with the child, to make the child feel safe enough to say, well, actually, what's been going on is...
So what are the parameters and boundaries?
Yeah. First of all, parents need to all put in software, parental software. If your child is 16 and below, I believe every parent needs to have parental software in place. And what that means is doing things like monitoring screen time. No child should be allowed to have a device 24/7. No child should go to bed at night with their devices, which happens a lot. And because it's very addictive, some of these children will get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. What do? they pick up the device. You have to have what I call digital sunset. That means at a particular time, devices should shut down so that you can de-screen yourself, if that's a word. So every family needs to have a family digital well-being plan. What's our plan? Hope is not a strategy, especially in the digital world. Our children are all connected. If you do a digital audit in a house, you'll be amazed at how many platforms children are using to access the internet. There's a phone, there's a smart device, there's somebody's tablet, there's a smart television, maybe domestic staff in the house have phones. So you need to first do that audit. How many points does my child have access? Then you can start saying, all right, what does screen time actually mean as a parent? What am I putting blocks on? Maybe it's your Wi-Fi that you need to use a router from that point to block it off at a time. Because if you do parental software per device, you might miss like 5 devices in the house.
True.
Right?
Very true.
So it's really doing that work to say, let me really do an audit of my family and my children and how they're getting online, then start to help them. Then you want to move into communication, because I say rules without relationship will lead to rebellion. Simple. Children will always push the envelope. Children will always try. Children will always do what they shouldn't do. That's a given. However, when you live in a world where the children have access at their fingertips, you don't have to think about sneaking out of the house. You don't have to strategize on, can I quickly go out and get back before mom and dad are home? No, now it's all on the palm, at your palm. So parents need to have a relationship, and that's why digital citizenship is a process. It's a conversation. It's continuous.
Okay, so I'm the parent. My husband and I are very busy. We're always working. We need our devices to function, because even though we didn't grow up with technology, we've now become dependent on it. And then I'm telling the kids, you can't use your phone after a certain time. You can't use your tablet after a certain time. But we're constantly on our phone and we keep saying things like, it's for work. How do you navigate around that?
The hardest work is mirroring what you're doing, is modeling what you're saying. Right? So it's really difficult because, like you said, a lot of parents are so dependent on it. And if you think about it, a lot of us started using smartphones at what age, right? And we're so dependent. So imagine a child who that is all they know. Imagine what dependency is going to look like 10, 15 years from a child who starts using a device at 5. The brains are being wired differently. If we go into what's happening on a neurological level, in terms of what's happening with brains and excessive screen time, the evidence is there. So it's not a matter of parents saying, but I'm always on it. I'm using it for work. I need it for work. Yeah, you need it for work. You should also manage your dependency. That's the truth. Parents themselves need that. But for a child, what you need to do is what I kind of said. Go back to family digital well-being plans. All right, maybe at dinner time, we don't use devices. And that means mom and dad. You can't tell your children, you can't use your phone, but then at dinner, you're like, Because one of the things we're seeing is that distracted parenting is on the increase, which means you're in the room, but you're not in the room. And once your children get used to the fact that my mom and dad's phone is more exciting than me, you are teaching that child that I should be using my phone and not making eye contact when mom and dad or anybody's talking to me. Because if even mom and dad are using their phone, every time I'm talking to them, I don't really matter that much. So parents must model it first and realize that your child does not know that you are working. All they see is you are pressing your phone, as we'll say. So you got to create some rules around that if you want to do the intentional work. To say, I'm going to shut down at a particular time. We're going to have family time where we don't use screens. Then I'm going to explain to the child that I need to get back on to finish work. But you need to put the blocks in place. If you don't, it's just one continuous, constantly being connected. And your children are watching and learning. And children today will tell you, you're a hypocrite. You're telling me I can't use my devices, but you're always on it.
Very true. Are there any benefits and disadvantages to this?
Yes. So there are lots of benefits. And I will be the last person to say they are not. But just as food is good for you, you cannot eat junk food every day. You cannot eat food 20 24/7 and say, but good food is good for us. So I like using analogies to make things seem, put it within context. So even with the children, I'll give you one practical example. When it was, you cannot use your phone first thing in the morning before you go to school. And it was almost like, but why? And I just had the brainwave to use an example. I said, imagine your young cousin is in the house, and while we're trying to get ready to get to school on time, he or she says they want to go to the playground to hang out before school. Won't it seem ridiculous? They were like, actually, yeah. I'm like, that's the equivalent. It's an electronic playground.
But what if their comeback is, yes, but I'm using it for education because of maybe my homework that I'm submitting today?
Then we get into time management. What were you doing the day before that you didn't finish your homework? That you have to do it first thing in the morning before school?
Yeah, but I finished my homework. I just want to refresh my mind.
Okay, and you have to do it now when we have a time limit to get to school for a particular time. We need to look at your time management skills. I haven't screamed, I haven't yelled. Positive discipline. We will go through that process till we get to a natural point where we can both agree that that's not the best use of your time in the morning when we have a time where you must get to school. Because if you are late, you are late. So what can we do to work backwards so that you don't get to a point where that becomes second nature and that becomes what you're always doing is in the morning, you're spending 20 minutes lost in the rabbit hole of I'm online doing schoolwork. But we all know what happens if you pick your phone first thing in the morning, right? You just start going down that road of checking, pressing. So I think it's really important that we all step back first and say, what are we solving for? Online platforms are huge. They're beneficial. We haven't even gotten into AI, which is a whole new generative AI. Parents even need to understand what's going on with ChatGPT. You got to know, because if you know what's going on, you can have conversations with your children around plagiarism, around how are you using this content to feed your brain, or are you getting lazy to use it to just give you the answer? Who are you really cheating? We've had these conversations in my house. You're not cheating anybody if you use it to give you the answer for work. You are the one not learning, and it's going to catch up with you somehow. It changes the conversation from, I'm not saying it's bad to use it, is how do you use it? So parents really have to lean into these conversations, have to talk to their children regularly because they know so much already. The internet is great, technology is great. Without it, there's so many things we wouldn't be doing today. However, that does not mean that there are not areas of it that we all need to really be having this dinner time conversations regularly with our children to help guide them to use it well.
I'm going to ask a curveball question because it seems like a lot to navigate around. Should the considerations around being an intentional digital citizen parent, should it be factored into whether you should even have children? Because it almost seems like if I have to navigate around all of this and I'm not even prepared, should I even be having children in the first place? Am I setting them up for failure?
You set them up for failure if you are not prepared, right? So, and one of the things I like doing is saying, listen, when televisions came out, what happened? When cars came out, what happened? So there are always going to be innovations. There's always going to be something that disrupts the world. The difference is we're in the fourth industrial revolution. That's not going anywhere. And because we're in the fourth industrial revolution, it is all about digital and things happening quicker and faster and adoption happening faster and faster and faster. For example, ChatGPT came out and I think within 5 days or something, it hit 1 million subscribers. People signed up. In what, 5 days? Even some of the most popular social media platforms, it took them years to get to that number. So what's happening is that the transformation is happening so quickly now. So if somebody asks that question to say, maybe I shouldn't have children, you need to ask the bigger question. What about climate issues? There are some people who are like, just based on where we are in the world and the climate challenges that we have, it's not responsible to bring a child into the world, for example. What about all the children that need a home in adoption homes? So there's always going to be a reason, but I wouldn't say technology should be something that makes a parent fearful to not have children. Absolutely not. It's being prepared for it. And, it's really weird that this was, I'll call it the mountain I started on when I started LagosMums, and I just felt many years ago that digital was going to change fundamentally the family. And what I've seen, I don't want to say it was inspired by God, but honestly it was, because I've never seen before I started, I never really heard of parenting coaching or anything around that, but I somehow started and I just kept going and seeing deeper and deeper how necessary this is. And every parent needs to go through what I call their own digital parenting awakening to say, where are we? Are we even prepared? And whenever you wake up, it's your morning. For some people, unfortunately, it's late, but it's never too late to make some steps towards correction. And being that, CBT, therapy, there's so many things that you can integrate to help you get back on what ideal looks like. But every parent cannot just hope for the best because of the damage that digital footprints holds today.
What kind of damage are we talking about?
So digital footprint where a child shares certain things online or a teenager shares certain things online and it affects them down the line. People are losing jobs because of something they tweeted when they were 14 or 15. A job shows up and they're like, you're racist. Or, all of those things come back. The internet doesn't forget. So if a child isn't taught with that what you share online stays online, whose fault is it if a parent never had that conversation with the child? Will you say the child should have known? Based on what should they have known? So it's a big job, but I never like leaving parents feeling overwhelmed.
It sounds overwhelming.
Be aware, and then take it bit by bit. What does that mean for me? So if all you do at the end of listening to this is, all right, where am I as a family? Where are we truly? This is not about forming. This is truly for the children you're raising. Where are you? And then start saying, what can I start to do to get us into a place where I feel more in control? Because when the parent feels fearful and worried, they react. When they react, you build a wall. Your child is not even going to talk to you then, because all they see is mom is always reacting. Dad is always reacting. Dad is always suspecting that I'm doing something bad online. So let me just do it anyway.
Yeah. So what you've just said takes me into my final question, which is, can you give us 5 strategies that we can employ to begin to raise, begin to raise digitally responsible citizens in our children, and for us as the parents to become digitally responsible as well?
So the first thing I'll say is realize that you need to learn this stuff. We're not born into
irrespective of what age you are as the parent.
Whether you're 60, 50, 20. So far you're raising a child in this world today, you need to do some learning to understand the implications of screens, online platforms, social media on your child and on yourself. But because we're focusing on children, right? So everybody first needs to just start with saying, I don't know this stuff. So I need to understand what is happening. Right, and what is going on. And there's so much research out there that there's nothing stopping you from getting this information. The second one is being willing to even say, all right, you know what, I need to understand how my child uses this platform. What do they like doing? Because the truth is that what a child does online usually is a sign of what they're interested in. So a child could be on YouTube watching cooking shows. That's not bad in itself, but how can a parent use that as a bonding opportunity? Oh, why don't you come up with 2 or 3 recipes every week we can try? You suddenly take the online interest offline. Or a child that likes to play video games. Why do you particularly like these video games? What about it interests you? Have you thought about creating your own video game? So I think second is leaning in and engaging with the children. The third is, as a parent, have some controls in place. Just the same way you won't say you think you live in a safe neighborhood, so you're not going to have a gate. You won't lock your door at night, or you won't put in security systems. You are going to. So start to think, what does parental software mean, and why do I have it? It's not that you want to be a monitoring spirit, but your child needs to be protected from the big bad internet world. Like they're exposed to everybody. So what does that mean for you with parental software? That's the third thing. You need to have parental software in place. Simple things like flagging comments, flagging keywords. So you can put it in such a way that if certain keywords come up, or your child's curiosity, when children are curious, our children are all going to be curious. When they type in something that might be a little concerning, this is where empathy comes in, and emotional intelligence. You don't show up screaming, why did you put that in? Why are you searching for that? No. You then calmly figure out, how does the conversation need to evolve to show that maybe my child is curious about this natural thing. Do you see what I mean? So that's the third one about parental software, why you put it in place. It's not to monitor the child. The fourth one I would say is ensuring that you are having regular conversations with your children. Screen free. So you need to create those rules in your house. when do we have screen-free times in this house? Your children need to know that they need to allow their brains to even be bored.
I see.
So they just need downtime.
I see.
So is it dinner?
Yeah.
Maybe dinner is when we won't use screens. Maybe there's one room in the house. I have one room in the house. They've been asking me to put a television. I'm not answering them. That's the screen-free room in the house. You just need to model to them that you can be off this thing.
Screen and survive.
And it is fine to sit down and
So
model
what's the
other
fifth
things.
one?
And the fifth one, I would say, is don't beat yourself up. Because when a parent comes feeling overwhelmed, fearful, like I'm in trouble, your children are going to pick it up.
Wow.
So please don't be overwhelmed. Realize that it's a journey. Realize that it's a process. And thankfully now we have things like parenting coaching that exist. It's okay to say, you know what, I don't know, or I'm struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
My child is 15. Maybe I've given them too much access. What can I do? My child is 6 years old. When should I give them their first device? Do you see what I mean? So no matter where you are on the spectrum, there's something that you can do to ensure you're raising a responsible digital citizen.
This has been awesome. Honestly, it really has. And I'm so thankful that you were able to come on today, Yetty. Thank you. It's been quite packed, and I think we need to keep having this conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So we've come to the end of this segment. Fumi and Helen will be rounding off the show in a few minutes. So please stay tuned whilst they do this. Thank you.